Battery is usually the first of the intentional torts taught in a 1L torts class. This is because it is a simple concept, and the other intentional torts affecting one's person build upon its fundamentals. Battery is where the concept of intent, transferred intent, and an individual's person is first introduced. And as you continue this playlist, you will see how these ideas are threaded throughout the intentional torts in general and those affecting one's person in particular. Keep in mind, although the acts that can constitute a battery are often the subjects of criminal statute, we will examine these acts in the context of torts law, and therefore only in a civil law context. Welcome to Roman Matter. This lesson will explore the intentional tort of battery. We will cover how the tort is defined, examine its elements, and go over a few examples. A word of caution, this course is intended to answer academic questions only. These materials are intended to reinforce your legal education or to satisfy the curious layperson, not legal advice. And with that, let's get to it. So what is a battery? The Restatement Second of Torts, Section 13, describes the circumstances under which a person can be held liable for a battery when caused by a harmful contact. Which is to say, what does the restatement have to say in regard to an actor who hit someone? Well, it states that, quote, an actor is subject to liability to another for battery if he acts intending to cause a harmful or offensive contact with the person of the other or a third person, or an imminent apprehension of such a contact, and a harmful contact with the person of the other directly or indirectly results. The Restatement Second of Torts, Section 18, further describes circumstances under which one could be held liable for a battery caused by offensive contact. It states that, quote, an actor is subject to liability to another for battery if he acts intending to cause a harmful or offensive contact with the person of the other or a third person, or an imminent apprehension of such contact, and an offensive contact with the person of the other directly or indirectly results. Section 18, subsection 2 continues, stating that an act which is not done with the intention stated in subsection 1a does not make the actor liable to the other for a mere offensive contact with the other's person, although the act involves an unreasonable risk of inflicting it and therefore would be negligent or reckless if the risk threatened bodily harm. The distinction between sections 13 and 18 is that a harmful contact occurred in the former and an offensive contact occurred in the latter. So we can take from these separate definitions the idea that a battery can occur from contacts that are either harmful, offensive, and sometimes a mix of the two. Okay, let's mold these somewhat clinical definitions into something more concise and useful. We can say that, to make a prima facie case for battery, the plaintiff must show the defendant acted intentionally to cause a harmful or offensive touching of the plaintiff's person. Okay, so we know what the restatement has to say regarding a battery's definition, but let's dig into the critical pieces composing the definition. Intent. This requirement is integral to all intentional torts. The tortfeasor must have acted with intent. Now, the restatement tells us what that means. The Restatement Second of Torts, Section 1, states that, quote, a person acts with the intent to produce a consequence if a. the person acts with the purpose of producing that consequence, or b. the person acts knowing that the consequence is substantially certain to result. The Restatement Second of Torts, Section 16, discusses the character of intent necessary for liability to attach to the actor. Subsection 1 provides that, quote, if an act is done with the intention of inflicting upon another an offensive but not a harmful bodily contact, or of putting another in apprehension of either a harmful or offensive bodily contact, and such act causes a bodily contact to the other, the actor is liable to the other for a battery, although the act was not done with the intention of bringing about the resulting bodily harm. This means that whether the actor possessed the intent to cause the resulting harm is actually immaterial. Only whether the actor possessed the intent to cause the action resulting in the harmful or offensive contact is material. If the tortfeasor intended his action to occur, then he would be held responsible for the consequences that result from it. Section 16, subsection 2 continues, and it looks at transferred intent. It states that, quote, If an act is done with the intention of affecting a third person in the manner stated in subsection 1, but causes a harmful bodily contact to another, the actor is liable to such other as fully as though he intended so to affect him. This is speaking to transferred intent. Now, transferred intent occurs when a tortfeasor intends a harmful or offensive contact to one person, but ends up affecting another unintended person. For example, a tortfeasor intends to throw a rock at one person, but ends up hitting another. In that case, the tortfeasor would be liable to the impacted individual, despite the fact that he did not intend the rock to hit him. Harmful contact. In the context of a battery, a contact is harmful if it results in or causes the plaintiff injury, disfigurement, or pain. In essence, a harmful contact is one that results in a physical disturbance of some kind to the plaintiff. But bear in mind, the physical disturbance must result in a physical harm to the other's person. Comment C, which qualifies Section 13, states that, quote, if an act is done with the intention described in Section 13, it is immaterial that the actor is not inspired by any personal hostility to the other or a desire to injure him, unquote. This speaks to what we covered prior, in that it is not the intention to do the harm that is necessary for liability to attach, only that the actor intended the action that ultimately resulted in the harm. A battery can also occur if the unwanted contact was offensive. But what constitutes offensive contact? Well, the Restatement Second of Torts, Section 19, provides that, quote, a bodily contact is offensive if it offends a reasonable sense of personal dignity, unquote. This is often the case when the actor makes a physical contact with the person of the other, but no physical harm takes place. Instead, it is a mere unconsented touching. However, bear in mind, not every unconsented touching will qualify as an offensive touching simply because the unwanted touch did not result in physical harm. Consider the stranger on the bus or the subway that touches your back to gesture you forward or taps you on the shoulder to get your attention. Such a touching may be unwanted, but generally this will not rise to the level of a battery. And with that, let's move on to some examples. Perhaps the best way to understand this relatively simple concept is to walk through several examples of what a tortious battery can look like. Perhaps the most straightforward example of a tortious battery is simply an unconsented physical contact between a plaintiff and a defendant resulting in physical harm. Consider a passenger in the car of his Uber driver. Some small argument escalates to the passenger trying to choke his driver. This is clearly a battery wherein the passenger defendant could be held liable to the driver plaintiff for harmful contact to his person. Let's look at another example to round out our understanding. It is important to understand that what can constitute the plaintiff's person is not limited to one's physical body. For instance, if we observe this confrontation between two businessmen, one of whom grabs the other by the lapel of his overcoat, such a touching is likely a battery. It is also an example of Restatement Section 19's offensive contact in that it likely offends a reasonable sense of the other gentleman's personal dignity. At base, what constitutes a battery is an actor's intentional and unconsented harmful or offensive contact with the person of another. Person should be read widely. It can mean one's body, but it can also mean one's clothing. Battery can result from harmful contact or offensive contact, but whatever that contact is, in order for liability to attach, the contact must be unconsented. That's it for this lesson. If you found it helpful, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave some comments below and check back often for more content. As always, thank you for visiting Roman Manor and have a lovely day.